On a crisp morning bathed in bright sunshine, Omar, a humble farmer with a lifetime of work etched into his hands, tucked a dented tin box securely into his coat pocket. For 30 years, he and his wife Layla had weathered storms, droughts, and endless nights of uncertainty. Now, in their anniversary week, Omar felt a surge of excitement. He had saved every spare dollar he could, hoping to buy a ring that sparkled almost as brilliantly as the love he carried for her. It was a gesture he believed would reaffirm the promise he'd made decades earlier, to cherish her forever. Omar lived simply, rising before dawn to tend his fields and his small flock of hens. Each day held routines as predictable as the sunrise. Yet this day felt momentous, charged with nervous energy. He wasn't used to venturing into the city, much less setting foot in a lavish jewelry store. Yet he was determined. Layla deserved something extraordinary. The bus ride into town left him time to recall everything he and Layla had endured. She'd stuck by him when crops failed, when debts loomed, when the hardships of farm life felt suffocating. Over and over, she had brushed off his worries, insisting that their bond meant more than any material possession. Omar still wanted to prove that, despite the calloused fingers and worn boots, he could give her something dazzling. Stepping off the bus, Omar was met with towering buildings and stylish storefronts. The city's pace felt foreign. People in sleek suits, polished shoes, and anxious strides. His throat tightened as he passed each glittering window. Eventually, he paused outside an opulent store whose display boasted rings that radiated under the meticulous spotlights. Mustering courage, Omar gripped his tin box. He pushed open the glass door, stepping inside to a cool, perfumed interior that instantly made him feel underdressed. Rows of jewelry sparkled in glossy cases. The floors were polished marble, reflecting shimmering lights overhead. Omar approached the nearest counter and was greeted by a tall, impeccably groomed salesman named Mr. Rowe. From the very start, there was an air of condescension in Mr. Rowe's half-smile. He sized up Omar's simple attire and the worn tin box that peeked out from his pocket. "Yes," the salesman said, arching an eyebrow. Omar's stomach churned, but he remained steady. "I'd like to look at a ring, something for my wife. It's our 30th anniversary." Mr. Rowe gave a faint laugh, gesturing to the case. "These are premium pieces," he remarked. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Omar nodded earnestly. "I've been saving for years. I'd appreciate it if you could show me that one." He pointed to a modest yet elegant ring featuring a petite diamond. Mr. Rowe retrieved the ring but made no effort to hide his skepticism. "This piece is quite costly," he said slowly, as if explaining to a child. "Might be more than you realize." Omar swallowed hard, opening the tin box. Inside lay a neat stack of crumpled bills and coins that he had painstakingly saved. "I'm prepared," he murmured. "If it's not enough, I'll figure something out." A stifled snicker emerged from a nearby customer who had been discreetly watching. "Mr." Rowe's eyes flicked from the tin to Omar's face. Then, with a derisive smirk, he announced, "I'm not sure we accept that sort of payment here." Heat flushed Omar's cheeks. "It's real money," he said. "I don't have a credit card, but I have enough to buy the ring." The salesman's lip curled. He tapped the ring's price tag in a mocking gesture. "This ring is worth more than you'd earn in several harvests. Maybe you should consider a more appropriate shop." A few bystanders tried to suppress laughter. Omar forced himself to stand taller, though a tremor betrayed his nerves. "Please," he said, voice tight with resolve. "I just want to see if I can afford it." Mr. Rowe set the ring back into its plush case. "I think you'd better leave," he said icily. When Omar hesitated, the salesman slapped his hand away from the countertop, lightly, but enough to jolt him backward and sting his pride. The crowd's laughter intensified, echoing in the vast, gleaming space. Omar's chest tightened. A swirl of shame, anger, and disappointment nearly brought tears to his eyes. Bowing his head, he gripped his tin box and stumbled toward the door. Unbeknownst to him, a quiet figure near the far corner, wearing a casual jacket and a discreet baseball cap, had witnessed the entire scene with growing dismay. Omar felt the city's bustle slam into him like a wall of sound the moment he stepped back onto the sidewalk. He couldn't decide if his burning cheeks came from embarrassment or from the day's bright heat. Pedestrians navigated around him with barely a glance, too preoccupied with their own business to notice the farmer clutching a battered tin box. He inhaled a shaky breath, blinking hard to keep from tearing up. "I should have known better," he muttered, gaze fixed on the store's ornate sign. He thought of Layla and how she would likely brush away his concern, telling him they didn't need fancy things. But he wanted to prove something, to show that their long years of sacrifice deserved a shimmering token of gratitude. Suddenly, a calm voice spoke from behind him. "Hey, are you okay?" Startled, Omar spun around to see a tall man in a well-worn jacket and cap. He had an unassuming look about him, yet his eyes radiated warmth and concern. Omar, not a follower of pop culture, didn't recognize Keanu Reeves. He simply saw a stranger offering a sympathetic ear, which felt like a lifesaver in a sea of indifference. "Yeah, I'm fine," Omar lied, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I guess I just don't fit in there." Keanu studied him for a moment. "I saw what happened," he said softly. "They had no right to treat you like that." Omar shrugged, casting his eyes downward. "Maybe they were right. I don't belong in a place like that. I saved for so long, but apparently it's not enough." "Not enough for who?" Keanu asked, voice tinged with empathy. "It sounds like your savings represent years of hard work, right?" Omar nodded. "I've been farming most of my life. Layla, my wife, she's everything to me. We've had it rough sometimes, but she never complained. I just wanted to do something special for her." Keanu's gaze flicked to the tin box. "That's genuine devotion," he said. "Money aside, you've put real effort and heart into this. That should be respected." Omar brushed away a threatening tear. The salesman certainly didn't see it that way. He practically told me to leave and never come back." Keanu exhaled, shaking his head in disapproval. "You don't deserve that. Come on, let's go back and make this right." Omar blinked in astonishment. "Go back? Are you serious?" He felt a spike of panic at the idea of confronting Mr. Rowe again. But something about this stranger's resolve gave him pause. He seemed so certain, so calm. "Trust me," Keanu said, resting a reassuring hand on Omar's shoulder. "Nobody deserves to be humiliated, especially not someone who's trying to show love. Let me help." For a moment, Omar hesitated. Everything in him wanted to flee the city and forget the sting of that humiliating encounter. Yet, Layla's face flashed in his mind, her unwavering smile, her kindness in every hardship. He realized he had no reason to feel ashamed. He had only tried to buy a ring for the woman he adored. "All right," Omar said, voice unsteady. "I'll follow your lead." They made their way back to the store. As they approached, passers-by shot curious glances, noticing Omar's timid demeanor and Keanu's quiet confidence. Inside, Mr. Rowe was still perched at the counter, recounting the earlier encounter to a couple of employees who smirked at his retelling. Their laughter cut off abruptly when the door opened again to reveal Omar, returning like an unexpected echo from a moment they thought was over. Keanu removed his cap, revealing a face that several people in the store began to recognize. Their hushed murmurs signaled a ripple of realization. The tall stranger was no ordinary city dweller. Omar felt the air thicken with tension, though he didn't grasp why. He only knew that, for the first time since stepping into this place, he wasn't facing judgment alone. "Mr. Rowe's arrogant smile froze the second he locked eyes with Keanu. The store's gleaming surfaces seemed to amplify the sudden hush, and even those who hadn't noticed them before now watched intently. Keanu guided Omar closer to the counter, placing himself between Omar and the salesman as if forming a protective barrier. The salesman's voice quavered slightly. "Can I help you?" he asked, clearly off balance. He avoided looking at Omar, focusing on Keanu with a wary stare. "You can start," Keanu replied evenly, "by explaining why you treated this man so poorly." "Mr. Rowe's cheeks reddened. I don't know what you mean," he stammered. "He didn't appear to have the means for our merchandise. We have certain standards." Keanu raised an eyebrow. Standards? Does that include humiliating someone who walks in with honest intentions? A wave of whispering swept across the room. Omar's heart pounded, but he felt a surge of gratitude. Someone was finally calling out the cruelty he'd faced. Mr. Rowe pressed his lips together, uncertain how to respond as the crowd's gaze bore into him. An uneasy stillness enveloped the room. You could almost hear hearts pounding, the tension winding tighter with each passing second. Mr. Rowe's self-assured posture began to wilt under the scrutiny of the man before him. Before the salesman could summon any retort, Keanu continued, voice unwavering but laced with indignation. "I saw you mock him," Keanu said, gesturing toward Omar, who clutched his tin box protectively. "You belittled him for wanting to buy a ring for his wife. You slapped his hand away as if he were less than human. That's not just poor customer service. That's cruelty." Mr. Rowe's eyes darted toward his coworkers. Some of them looked down, feigning disinterest. Others pretended to busy themselves with rearranging jewelry trays, but their ears were clearly attuned to every word. A few customers, phones at the ready, appeared to be recording. The salesman realized his behavior was under a growing spotlight. "Sir, with respect," Mr. Rowe finally managed. "Our clientele usually—" "Stop," Keanu interjected quietly. "Your clientele usually has what? More expensive clothing? Credit cards with no limit? Does that justify humiliating a man who saved for years to buy a gift for his wife?" Omar swallowed hard. He felt the weight of the stares, but somehow, with Keanu by his side, he wasn't cowering anymore. Instead, he recalled every early morning spent in the fields, every blister and ache endured to amass enough money to stand in this store. His love for Layla wasn't measured in currency. It was measured in devotion. A hush fell as Mr. Rowe struggled for words. Moments earlier, he'd reveled in the power of mocking a farmer. Now, confronted by Keanu's stern gaze, he seemed small and uncertain. "I didn't realize," he mumbled. "No," Keanu said, "you chose not to realize. And that's the problem." In the crowd, a woman who had been browsing stepped forward. "He was telling the truth," she said, nodding toward Omar. "I saw it. The salesman basically shoved him away. It was awful." Mr. Rowe's flush deepened. He fiddled nervously with a silver display tray, which rattled under his trembling hands. Keenly aware that more than one person was filming, he spoke in a forced, cordial tone. "Perhaps we can start over. If he has the funds, then let's see what he can afford." The half-hearted apology sparked a flicker of anger in Keanu's eyes. But he knew better than to let this degrade into a shouting match. He shifted his attention to Omar. "You said you wanted to see a particular ring. Is it still here?" Omar pointed to the modest diamond ring he had first noticed, now sitting behind the glass like a distant star. "That's the one," he said. "It reminded me of my wife. Simple, but it shines." Keanu offered a small nod. "Let's see it." Mr. Rowe hesitated, then reached under the counter to retrieve it, handling the piece like it was fragile porcelain. Carefully, he placed it in front of Omar. Keanu gestured for Omar to pick it up, and the farmer did so with trembling fingers. His heart pounded with a mix of awe and worry, mindful that the price might exceed what lay inside his tin. Bracing himself, Omar set the ring gently on the counter. "How much?" he asked, voice hushed. Mr. Rowe named the price, which made Omar's stomach twist. He opened his tin and counted out the bills and coins, each one a symbol of sacrifices made. The salesman watched with barely concealed skepticism. Others in the store craned their necks to see if the farmer truly had enough. A lump formed in Omar's throat when he realized he was just shy of the total. A few coins were missing. Maybe if he'd had one more successful harvest last season. His shoulders sagged. "I'm close," he murmured, "but I guess not close enough." He began gathering his money, hands shaking. The humiliation threatened to return like a tidal wave. Before he could step back, however, Keanu placed a gentle hand on his arm. The actor pulled out his own wallet and counted the difference without fanfare, placing the sum on the counter. Several gasps rippled through the onlookers. Omar's eyes widened. I can't let you do that, he began. Keanu raised a calming hand. Trust me, it's fine. Consider it a small gift from one person who believes in genuine love to another. Omar's eyes stung with tears of gratitude. For a moment, he was speechless. Mr. Rowe blinked, glancing between the pair. The story had taken a sudden turn he clearly hadn't anticipated. Realizing the ring was now paid for, he slipped it into a velvet box, sliding it across the counter with trembling fingers. Here, the salesman said, his voice subdued. It's yours. Omar clutched the box, inhaling deeply. Relief and joy warred with the remnants of shame. Keanu gently nudged him away from the counter. We've done what we came here for, he said quietly. No need to spend another second in this store. The pair emerged onto the sidewalk, like men stepping from a storm-lashed ship onto calm shores. The midday sun illuminated Omar's tear-streaked cheeks, but he wore an expression of cautious elation. The ring in his pocket felt like proof that decency could triumph, even in an environment that had tried to crush his spirit. Keanu slid his wallet back into his jacket, scanning the street. How are you feeling? He asked Omar. Omar laughed shakily, still in disbelief. Overwhelmed. Thankful. I don't know how to repay you. Keanu shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Just keep loving your wife with the same passion that brought you here. They started walking, the bustling city crowd parting around them. Omar's mind whirled. How would he explain the ring to Layla? Would she ask how he managed the final cost? He decided he'd be honest and share the story, though he worried she might find it too grand a gesture. A flicker of anxiety soon gave way to warmth. He pictured the joy on her face, how she might press her hands to her mouth in astonishment when he slipped the ring onto her finger. That thought alone was worth every grueling morning in the fields. They had only made it a block or two before Keanu spotted a smaller jewelry shop, its sign modest but inviting. A bouquet of fresh flowers adorned the entrance, and the large windows displayed handcrafted pieces that seemed crafted with genuine care, rather than with unattainable price tags. He gently nudged Omar's arm. You see that place over there? Omar nodded. Looks cozy. Keanu smiled. Come on, let's take a peek. Maybe I'll pick something up myself, and we can support someone who respects their customers. Curiosity piqued. Omar followed Keanu inside. Unlike the polished arrogance of the first store, this space felt warm and personal. Soft music played in the background, and the woman behind the counter, Miss Hughes, looked up with a friendly grin. Welcome, she said. How can I help you today? The difference in atmosphere was striking. Omar felt tension lift from his shoulders. Keanu asked Miss Hughes about her favorite items in the store, and she excitedly showcased a variety of rings, necklaces, and bracelets. She explained the uniqueness of each piece and inquired about their personal stories, clearly more interested in what brought them in rather than the size of their wallets. Omar marveled at a small ring that sparkled with a simple but tasteful design. If I hadn't just bought one, I'd swear this would be perfect for Layla, he said softly. Miss Hughes smiled. You must really love her. I can tell by the way you talk. At that, Omar's cheeks colored with modesty. Keanu wandered to another display, eventually selecting a delicate pendant for someone he planned to surprise. Even though he was a world-renowned figure, he handled the transaction as if he were any ordinary customer, a habit that underscored his down-to-earth nature. When they left the shop, each carried a small bag, but Omar's heart felt exponentially lighter. I wish I had started in there, he said, exhaling. Could have saved myself some trouble. Keanu shrugged. Sometimes we stumble into the wrong places, and that's how we learn where we really belong. Omar nodded thoughtfully. You know, I might still be out on that sidewalk, feeling like a fool if you hadn't stepped in. I've never been a man of big gestures, but I needed that ring for Layla. Thank you for everything. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on Omar's shoulder. I'm just glad I was there. Now all that's left is giving your wife the surprise she deserves. They exchanged a warm handshake, and Keanu gave Omar his contact information, insisting that if Omar ever wanted to share how Layla reacted, or needed anything else, he could call. Omar tucked the slip of paper into his coat, promising to stay in touch. Despite the city's vastness and the chain of events that had brought them together, it felt as if they'd forged a genuine connection, the kind seldom formed amidst anonymous crowds. Parting ways, Omar started toward the bus stop, ring safe in his pocket. He gazed at the tall buildings one last time, remembering how small he'd felt when he first arrived. Now, though, each step was surer. He couldn't wait to return home to his farm, to the woman who had been his unwavering partner through 3 decades of life's challenges. By the next morning, an unexpected storm of social media chatter began swirling around the incident at the luxury store. It turned out that one of the bystanders had discreetly captured a video of Keanu Reeves defending Omar, the farmer who wanted to buy a ring for his wife. The clip showed the humiliation, the slap to Omar's hand, and the moment Keanu stepped forward to confront the salesman. When posted online, the footage quickly went viral, stirring conversations about basic respect and the power of standing up for someone who has been wronged. All corners of the internet buzzed with reactions. Some commenters praised Keanu for using his public platform to champion everyday kindness, while others applauded Omar's perseverance in trying to show love for his wife. The store, which had prided itself on exclusivity, suddenly faced a barrage of negative reviews, many pointing out the glaring irony. A place dedicated to celebrating love via expensive jewelry had treated a loving husband with utter contempt. The owner of the luxury store, Mr. Whitmore, soon found himself scrambling to manage the PR fallout. In a press statement, he offered a formal apology to Omar and announced the termination of Mr. Rowe's employment. "We uphold the highest standards of customer service and do not condone discriminatory behavior," Mr. Whitmore said, trying to stifle the uproar. Yet the public remained skeptical, noting the store's eagerness to salvage its reputation only after the viral video threatened its image. Back on his quiet farm, Omar was oblivious to the online storm. He was focused solely on making final preparations for his and Layla's anniversary that evening. The backyard, overlooking rows of corn and the soft glow of the setting sun, had been transformed with twinkling string lights and hand-picked wildflowers. A small table stood at the center, set for 2. Layla emerged from the house at Omar's request, her eyes going wide at the romantic tableau. "Omar, what have you done?" she whispered, a smile tugging at her lips. He guided her gently by the hand, helping her into a simple wooden chair. Then he took a seat beside her, the ring burning a hole in his pocket. "You've given me 30 years of your life," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. "You've stood by me through failed crops, through days when we had little more than hope. I wanted to give you something that shows you how deeply I appreciate you." Tears shone in Layla's eyes. "You never needed to buy me anything," she said. "I knew your heart from the start." Omar smiled, his own eyes misting. "Let me do it anyway." He pulled out the velvet box, opening it slowly to reveal the diamond ring. Layla gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in disbelief. "Omar," she breathed, voice trembling with awe. "It's beautiful." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, glinting under the soft glow of the lights. "The day I went to buy it," he said hesitantly, "something happened. I was humiliated. If it weren't for a kind stranger who stepped in, I might have given up. He helped me finish what I started." Layla shook her head in wonder, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You deserve kindness," she whispered, clasping his hands in hers. "I just can't believe you found it from a stranger." Omar nodded, remembering Keanu's supportive presence. He said, "I didn't owe him anything, just to keep loving you. It's the easiest promise I could ever make." They exchanged quiet laughter and soft words, leaning into each other with relief and joy. Meanwhile, the rest of the world caught wind of Omar's story. It appeared on news segments, online articles, and viral compilations celebrating everyday heroes. Hundreds of comments poured in, lauding Omar's dedication and highlighting Keanu's humility. That night, as the stars emerged, Omar and Layla dined under the glow of candles, forming new memories that would carry them through the next decades of their marriage. The ring, though modest by some standards, symbolized far more than any price tag could measure. It embodied resilience, compassion, and the reaffirmation of vows that had sustained them through every hardship. Far away, Keanu Reeves sat down in a quiet space, scrolling through clips of the viral video. He smiled faintly, hoping Omar and Layla were enjoying their special moment. Their story reminded him, once more, that the greatest treasures in life aren't sold in fancy stores. They exist in the simple yet profound act of caring for another human being. What began as a routine day for Omar, just another trip to the city, became a profound lesson in empathy, tenacity, and the unexpected power of one kind stranger's intervention. The humiliating rejection he faced inside the luxury store threatened to overshadow his years of careful saving and heartfelt intentions. Yet, in stepping forward to defend him, Keanu Reeves demonstrated that genuine compassion can eclipse even the most hurtful instances of prejudice. Omar ultimately secured the ring for Layla, but the jewelry itself was never the true prize. The real jewel lay in the confirmation that human decency still thrives in surprising places, whether from a world-famous actor or a gentle smile offered by a sympathetic onlooker. Their story, captured on a brief video clip, reverberated across social media and inspired countless viewers to question how they, too, could stand up for someone in need. For Omar and Layla, that ring now gleams as a testament to the love they've nurtured for 30 years. Their anniversary celebration unfolded under string lights and starry skies, symbolizing a quiet victory over the arrogance and cruelty they had encountered. The viral attention eventually waned, but its impact remained, reminding everyone that neither wealth nor social standing defines a person's worth. In the end, a humble farmer and a compassionate bystander renewed our faith that small acts of kindness can have a resounding effect. Even in an often unforgiving world, hope emerges when we choose empathy over apathy. May their story urge us all to protect one another's dignity, share in each other's victories, and remember that love and the bravery to defend it are treasures beyond any price.